In a quiet town in Ohio, where life moved slowly and summers were filled with baseball games and muddy shoes, two brothers grew up side by side. James and William Carter shared everything: their room, their laughter, and their dreams. One of those dreams was to serve their country, just like their father did before them. James was the steady one, protective, thoughtful. William, 2 years younger, brought the light, always smiling, always finding joy in the little things. They weren't just brothers, they were best friends. But then came the war, and with it, a world that would test everything they believed in. This is not just a story about battles and uniforms. It's a story about family, about promises, and about a reunion no one thought possible. One that happened when all hope had nearly faded. Welcome to the channel. If you believe these stories should never be forgotten, join us. Subscribe now and turn on notifications to help keep every memory and every voice alive. Now, without further delay, let's get straight to the point. In 1942, James Carter received his call to serve. William followed just a few months later. For a short time, they believed they'd be side by side, fighting shoulder to shoulder, like they always dreamed. But war has a way of rewriting plans. James was sent to the rugged hills of Italy. William was assigned to a different unit, one that would land in the heart of Normandy. The brothers who once shared bunk beds and backyard secrets were now heading to opposite ends of a world on fire. Before leaving, they stood together on the edge of the training grounds, helmets in hand, hearts full of uncertainty. James placed a hand on William's shoulder and said, "No matter where we go, we'll find each other on the other side, brother." The days that followed were filled with chaos, noise, and distance. But the letters they exchanged, even censored and delayed, carried pieces of home. They wrote about the food, the cold, the strange landscapes, and always about their promise. Those words kept their bond alive. Even across oceans and battlefields, they still felt close. Two brothers separated by war, but never by heart. It was the summer of 1944. The world was holding its breath after the invasion of Normandy, and James Carter had just returned from another long day on patrol when a letter arrived at his unit's makeshift post. The envelope bore the official seal, the kind every soldier silently feared. The words inside were few, formal, cold. "We regret to inform you that Private William Carter is missing in action and presumed lost." For a few moments, James couldn't move. He read the lines again and again, hoping he had misunderstood. But the words never changed. His younger brother, the boy who once made paper planes on their front porch, had vanished somewhere in the chaos of France. James didn't accept it. He sent letters to the War Department, asked his officers for updates, even tried to find other men from William's unit. But there were no answers, just silence. The grief settled in slowly, like a heavy fog. James didn't speak much after that. He tied William's helmet to his pack, carrying it wherever he went. It was a small gesture, a quiet tribute. The war hadn't stopped, but something inside James had. What was once duty now felt like survival. And every night, as he stared at the stars above Europe, he whispered one question into the dark: "Where are you, Will?" Even with grief pressing on his chest like the weight of his own gear, James Carter kept moving. Orders came, roads changed, towns were freed, and names were crossed off maps. But nothing could erase the ache of losing William. Not from his thoughts, not from his silence. He fought through the rugged hills of Italy, then joined the advance into southern France. Every time a town was liberated, every time a flag was raised, there was a part of him that remained still. Not in celebration, but in quiet reflection. His brother should have seen this, should have stood beside him. Along the way, James formed a bond with Private Charlie Dawson, a sharp-tongued soldier from Texas who used humor like armor. Charlie could make the bleakest situation feel lighter, always trying to pull a smile from James, even when none came. It was also during this stretch that James met Father Matthew, a chaplain who didn't preach as much as he listened. He understood the kind of pain that didn't always show on the surface. One evening, as they sat under the ruins of a shattered bell tower, Father Matthew said something James would never forget. "War takes a lot from us, son, but we still get to choose what we hold on to." And so James held on, to his duty, to his memories, and most of all, to the hope that somehow not everything was lost. By early 1945, the end of the war felt near, but nothing about the journey ahead seemed easy. James and his unit had been ordered to move deeper into newly secured areas of Germany. Not to fight, but to patrol, to clear roads, and to bring some sense of order to places that had known only chaos. The cold was unforgiving. Snow covered the wreckage of broken towns, masking the destruction beneath a blanket of silence. Houses stood without roofs, windows shattered, smoke still drifting from places that once held life. The people they passed rarely spoke. Their eyes carried stories they could no longer find words for. James, hardened by loss and time, walked those streets with quiet purpose. His thoughts often drifted to his brother William, whose memory still lived in every step he took. One day near the outskirts of Leipzig, during what seemed like a routine patrol, they came across a group of Allied soldiers escorting prisoners of war. The men were thin, wrapped in torn blankets, faces sunken, some barely able to lift their heads. James didn't think much of it at first. Scenes like this had become common, but something in the stillness of that moment was about to change everything. James walked past the line of prisoners slowly, his boots sinking into the mud with each step. He scanned the faces without focus, not expecting to recognize anyone, not hoping for anything. These were just more strangers shaped by war. But then something happened. A pair of eyes met his. Familiar, unmistakable. They were his eyes. The same sharp, steady gaze he had grown up seeing across the dinner table. He stopped cold. The world around him faded. The sounds, the chaos, the broken city. All that remained was that one moment. "Will," he whispered, barely able to say the name. One of the prisoners, frail and wrapped in a torn blanket, stepped forward. Slowly, he pulled the fabric from his face. It was William, pale, thinner than James remembered, but alive, real, standing just a few feet away. William stumbled toward him, and James caught him in his arms. They held each other tightly, surrounded by mud and rubble, as the rest of the unit watched in silence. No one said a word. There was no need. In that single embrace, two lives, once torn apart by war, were made whole again. In the days that followed their reunion, William began to share what had happened, pieces of a chapter that no one else had lived but him. During a mission in Normandy, his unit was caught in an ambush. Surrounded and outnumbered, he was taken prisoner and transported to a camp near the Belgian border. It was a place defined by silence, cold mornings, and the constant weight of uncertainty. Days turned into weeks, seasons changed. Food was scarce, the winters harsh, and the air always carried a sense of waiting. But through it all, William held on to something stronger than fear. Hope. Not just the hope of one day walking free, but the quiet belief that his brother was still out there, looking for him. He often told the other prisoners, in a voice that never wavered, "My brother's out there. He won't stop until he finds me." That belief kept him going. When his body was weak, his faith carried him forward. And now, standing face to face with James once more, surrounded by the ruins of war, it felt like a promise had been fulfilled. Not just by chance, but by love that had never let go. After that unforgettable moment, the one where two brothers found each other in the ruins of war, James and William stayed side by side through every remaining mile. James, now a seasoned soldier, used his rank and connections to make sure William received the medical care he desperately needed. He didn't leave his brother's side, not this time, not ever again. Once William recovered enough to stand and walk on his own, the two were reassigned together. They weren't just brothers anymore. They were partners in uniform, bonded by something few could ever understand. As the war neared its end, they moved through the final towns of Germany, witnessing a world slowly starting to breathe again. But for them, the fight had become something deeper, not just for peace across nations, but for the future they had almost lost. Each step forward was a quiet reminder, we're still here. And they weren't just walking back from war, they were finding their way back to life. In the spring of 1946, the Carter brothers finally came home. Marion, Ohio, their quiet hometown, welcomed them not just with banners and handshakes, but with something deeper, a sense of awe and heartfelt relief. Everyone in town had heard about their reunion. Many had believed that William was gone forever. Seeing the two brothers walking side by side down Main Street, alive, smiling and whole, felt like a miracle carved out of the ruins of war. Life slowly began again. James, always drawn to books and reflection, became a school teacher, sharing lessons not only from the past but from experience. William, ever practical and full of energy, joined his father in the family garage, fixing engines and offering stories to anyone who'd listen. On Sundays, they could be seen walking together to the small church on the hill, the same pew, the same routine. And waiting at the door was Father Matthew, now retired, but still offering wisdom and quiet smiles. He would greet them with the same words week after week. Brotherly promises, those are made of steel. And everyone in town understood exactly what he meant. As the years passed and the lines on their faces deepened, James and William Carter became part of the quiet rhythm of Marion. Not as heroes seeking praise, but as brothers who kept a promise made in the darkest of times. One day, a young local journalist visited them for a war memory project. The recorder clicked on, and James spoke first, his voice steady. The war took us far from home, but somehow, it brought us back too. William leaned back in his chair, smiled gently, and added, "If the world ever forgets our names, I just hope they remember our promise. We said we'd return." And we did. Today, in the heart of Marion, there stands a bronze statue of two soldiers locked in a silent embrace. Beneath it, a simple inscription reads, "Brothers, soldiers, reunited by hope." It's not just a monument, it's a reminder that even in the midst of war, bonds built by love and loyalty can survive the unthinkable. That sometimes the most powerful victories don't happen on the battlefield. They happen in the arms of someone who never stopped believing. What about you? Have you heard this story before? What would you have done if you were in James or William's place? What other stories of soldiers and families deserve to be remembered? Let's keep their memory alive. Together. If this story moved you, don't let it fade away. Leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss the stories that still need to be told. Until next time, honor their journeys, cherish the memories, and always keep your promises. We'll see you in the next story.